Like the mouth of the soil in the earth, breaking through the rocks, growing wild and tall till the buds begin to pop. So pack me in a bowl or roll me in a spliff, or you're breaking me down, you can feel. Hey, this is Ryan Herron from Portland, Oregon, and I'm here with...
I'm Amanda Breeze in Toronto.
Yes, and we're here today to talk about all the fun stuff around one of our favorite plants, cannabis. And today we're talking about Amanda's trip to Michigan. She went to go check out the scene there, and we're going to dig into it a little bit. I actually grew up in Michigan, so I might have some things to say about a youth's experience there. But yeah, tell us, I know you visited some farms and some other stuff, but
yeah, it was such a spontaneous trip. One of my besties, Elia, lives out there, so I popped out to go hang out with them for a bit, and I had a couple days. That's the nice thing about Michigan, living in Toronto. It's right there. It was maybe it's supposed to be a 4-hour drive. I think with Toronto traffic, it was more like 6, but it's really not that bad, and it's right there. Of course, I went to Trader Joe's, had to.
Yep.
Had to do my TJ stop.
Yeah, load up.
That got his dressing. And anyway, the weed. So I popped around. I got to smoke some weed and check it out. So I was mostly in Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor area.
Cool.
It's those two cities. They're basically sister cities, right next to each other. They're both so freaking cute. Lots of trees. The sun was shining. It was just like such a great trip to Michigan, and the freaking weed scene is bumping. It is just, there's events, there's spaces, and yeah, I popped into a bunch of dispensaries. I mean, my friend, maybe I don't want to reveal that they smoke weed, but they're not in the scene. And so I had to do a lot of discoveries on my own. So of course, first thing I did was popped around to some dispensaries that caught my eye. So I went into one where they actually, instead of calling themselves a dispensary, called themselves a provisioning center.
Ooh. So was that like a loophole? What does the legislation in Michigan allow you to do right now?
Michigan is rec. They fully passed. They're
personal use, adult use, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly. So they're full recreational since I think 2018. So there's a ton of shops there.
Yeah. For the longest time, the counties kind of got to control who was allowed in or who was allowed to actually open up shops. So my experience with Michigan is so many times I would go there and I would be like, hey, there's dispensaries all over the place. And they would say like, oh, it's just medical right now, or you can't go in there, or it's just CBD products. They're waiting to get their full license. So I think that's still the case for a lot of Michigan, but like Detroit and those types of areas are fully opened up.
I did get a tour of a dispensary called Winewood Organics. They're a dispensary / farm site. They call them something different there. They called them like micro businesses or something. There's this very specific name. Yeah, a micro business. And they basically grow, process, and sell everything on site.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was so cool. Honestly, shout out to Winewood Organics. I just was at this provisioning center. I was just asking them some questions about things to do, other spots I should check out. And they were like, oh, you have to go to Winewood. That's the spot they grow on site. So I pulled up. It smelled so good the minute you arrive. I don't want to say the smell was permeating because I don't think that's following the law to a T, but definitely when you get close to the building, you're getting some serious wafts. It was throwback Humboldt 2012. It was the smell. I was like, my God, this is what weed is supposed to smell like. Their shop is so freaking cute. They make all their own extracts, tons of different edibles and gummies. It's all indoor. They're growing everything on site. They're making all their stuff on site. When I went back the next day for a tour, the owner and master grower, Eric, amazing human. He set up such a robust space, like cannabis space. Just every little detail. For example, all of the soil that they're using is local from Michigan and has some feather meal in it. That's like a renewable resource because it comes from feathers. And it's just really crazy. They have all these little buggies that they've put in the soil on purpose to help with all of that. He has one of the most advanced watering systems I've ever seen. Really just some next level stuff. So it was cool because it was a mix of like a more traditional indoor growing practice. I think he said he's been growing for over 20 years. So he has tons of experience doing indoor cultivation, and then mixing it with all this new modern tech that's coming out to advance all these indoor outdoor grow spaces. So I was like, it was clean. It was just such a cool space. The staff is small, maybe like 6 or 7 people, like totally family vibes. So nice. If you go to Ann Arbor, you have to go to Winewood. And I haven't even talked about their weed. Their weed was so fucking good.
Oh, very nice.
Bro, holy, like,
what did you see? What are they growing? Like, I'm always so interested in the different like strain selections in different cities.
So they had some classics like the Durban Poison. You know, they had some really classic strains that he said he's been growing for a long time. Some of the seeds that he's gotten have been from real OGs. Because, you know, here they're quite strict about where you get your genetics, but it seemed to me like Michigan is a little more lax on where the genetics are coming from. So he was able to source just really classic strains like the Durban Poison. And then they have some in-house strains that they're doing. The one that I ended up, they had like an apple pie. They had a nuttier one. It's not big. I think maybe 200 plants. So it's not crazy big.
Yeah.
3 rooms, right? It's indoor. And then the one that I ended up going with was this, what was it called? Lemon slushy. Hang on, I still got the jar. It's
yeah, that sounds good.
What was it? Lemon slushy, I think it was called. Yeah, holy fuck. Like the terps were off the charts. I don't know if the label says. They said they test for everything. That was the one thing he told me. They test for literally everything. Carcinogens. If you go on their website, you can see like their heavy metals testing and all of those things because they really want to cater to their clients to make sure they get exactly what they want. And so they list all that info. And what's so cute is they have video cameras in all of the rooms. So you can actually watch the live stream of the growing rooms from their website, but also from the lobby. So you can see the grow rooms on a TV screen when you go into the lobby. It was honestly, the whole thing was fucking cool as fuck. And their weed is some of the best I've seen in a really long time. I was sitting there thinking to myself, I should move to Michigan because this weed is fucking fire.
And I love that. I've seen the cannabis culture like really take hold since cannabis was sort of quasi legalized in Michigan in like the last 5-10 years. But back in the day, the penalties were really stiff. So almost for growing, for cultivation. And so most of the weed that I smoked actually came from Canada. It was what was traditionally called beasters, you know, factory grown weed that was packed just probably a little wet, even with some sugar leaf on it. And not super enjoyable, really not something that was like developed in any way, just really a commodity product. So I felt like I really missed out this whole renaissance of people coming in and coming out of the basement, being able to show off their work because I would say like Michigan seems like maybe in the top 5 states for indoor cultivating. I think just because the weather there is so shitty and it's like nearly every house I lived in there had a basement. It's just houses are built with basements. Well, hey, there you go. Perfect recipe for indoor cultivation. So I'm glad to see, especially like breeders. I think Gromer, Thug Pug, is out of Michigan. And so we're seeing all these like funky peanut butter and GMO crosses popping up there. And which for me, anytime I look at that, I'm just salivating. So I'm glad you got to dig in.
Oh my gosh, I was so happy. I just want to say that was like so unexpected. Like I was just doing my usual dispensary roundabout, checking out a few places, trying to tap into what's going on. And that recommendation to go there really was a game changer for me. And like, I also want to mention they are growing jealousy.
Ah, very nice.
I
Very
forgot
nice.
to mention that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I did also forget to mention is me and Eric talked a little bit about how there was a lot of challenges for them to enter the legal market. So, like you were saying earlier, it's not set up to be easy for people, but slowly we're seeing these dedicated craft growers making their way into the scene. This shop, next time you're back in Michigan, you have to fucking go. It was so next level. Even if you don't get a chance to take the tour, I think it was sort of an unofficial tour because I just was like, can I go back there and see?
Like, I'm excited, and I know what's up. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was like, I would just really love to see whatever is going on behind that door, because it smells so fucking good. So yeah, and they're doing it all organic. That's the thing. That's the fucking thing. You can't beat that. Organic and that variety and that flavor profile and just the way they treated the plants, even from the trimmers to the processing. It was just really, honestly, a really dreamy, idyllic scenario.
I mean, it sounds like it. And those are the words that are like popping in my head too, because I think everyone, when they started a cannabis company, wanted the edibles and the concentrates and the dispensary all under one roof. And, it's their buddies working there, and people it's a real sense of community amongst everyone, including the patrons. And legislation, red tape, money from outside organizations makes that so difficult. I mean, I know that there was a place here that was just trying to extract in the same building as the dispensary, and they had put up blast-proof glass so you could look into the extraction room and see them doing this.
Right.
And for whatever reason, some small rule, they were not allowed to show that to the customer, and so ended up having to just cover the glass so you couldn't see the production. So I love to hear someone actually doing it and with some success. And if I wanted to go and smoke this flower and be like, oh, the lemon slushy from Colorado, fuck yeah. Oh, and that same lemon slushy trim ended up in these edibles, I'll take those too. I trust the cultivation practices. I know where the weed came from. Like, that just feels really good as a consumer to see that all right there.
And bro, smelling it, because that's what got me going, was the fact that when I walked in, it didn't smell like a fucking doctor's office. It smelled like fucking weed. Beautiful displays in their shop. Even if I hadn't have gotten the tour, I was already sold. So like I had gone in, bought some of the weed, was like, holy shit, this place is stunning. I went home and smoked it and was like, oh my fucking God, this weed tastes exactly like it smells. It was the lemon slushy. I couldn't believe it. And then, I just got in touch with them through their Instagram, Winewood Organics, and ended up, chatting with the owner and getting myself behind the closed doors to see what's going on back there. And it was everything I wanted more. And the trimmers were working on the lemon slushy. And I was like, oh, what do you guys got going on there? And they let me look at the little nug, and I smelled it and I was like, oh, I fucking know exactly what that is. That's the lemon. So it was just really tasty. My friend doesn't smoke too much, and she was like, oh, this is impressive freaking weed. I was like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So I had a great time there, and should I say it? I brought some back with me. Shh, don't tell anyone.
It's just a plant, Amanda. It shouldn't be upsetting anybody.
Don't tell anyone. I've never done that before, but I couldn't leave it behind. I broke the law because the weed was so good.
Weed's so good, it'll make you break the law. I mean, I think that's like a fair tagline. I feel so bad. There's some guy who's a cultivator in Rhode Island, and he was really proud of his weed. He was just a little tiny, like micro-tiered dude, and he's like, you know what? My weed's so good, you're gonna be able to buy it in New York. And then he showed himself on TikTok driving to New York and walking into a dispensary and like dropping off a half pound and being like, "That's for me in Rhode Island. You sell that weed. It's good enough to be New York weed. All right, thanks. Later. Bye, guys." And then people were like, "Oh no, bro, you just took your license, showed yourself transporting weed across state lines, showed you like trying to vend it in a dispensary that does not have a license to do so. Like, bad news for your license."
It's pretty rough because and on TikTok, no less. TikTok is so strict about that. You don't want to get busted by the TikTok police either.
Right.
Because I tried to post a video of 420 of the biggest joints on TikTok, and I made sure you couldn't directly see too much, but TikTok was like, "No, bitch, we know exactly what this is. We are taking this down." So they're strict.
I'm so surprised by that because it doesn't even like ring any of the bells of someone like rolling a joint or showing weed or selling a thing, which is what they should really be looking out for because that might threaten their service in some way, I suppose.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, so that was my adventure to Winewood Organics. We're just gonna skim right over what I just said. And then let's see what else. So what's interesting is when I got home, I started digging into the Michigan wheat scene because I was thinking like, oh man, I just had such a great experience there. People have got to come, you know, it is totally a cannabis tourism destination. And I just think it's really underrated. Like I've been to Colorado. I smoked the fucking weed there, like no shade, but the stuff in Michigan, significantly better. And Michigan is like so close to Ontario. So I just like, I want to hype up Ypsi and I want to hype up Ann Arbor because they're also just like two really charming cities. And so as I started to, you know, dig in for things to share, I discovered this rich history of cannabis in Ann Arbor, which we touched on a little. I think that you can, that since like the 60s, it's been a hub for radical movements and radical cannabis movements. I didn't even know. I'm a big Abby Hoffman fan. He's you know, an OG activist. He's part of the Revolution for the Hell of It movement.
Right. If you read Steal This Book, there's still some good pointers in there. You can still put some of those lessons to practice.
You know what? I read Revolution for the Hell of It when I was like younger in my 20s, and it was kind of life-changing for me. So as I'm skimming all these articles and I'm seeing like the SDS pop up and the Black Panthers pop up and Abby Hoffman's name, and then all of these cannabis celebrities, I was like, am I on the right wiki right now? Like, are we still talking about Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor? So this is not just a cool place to visit today, but those cities have a robust piece of cannabis history that's telling the larger story of the past 50 years.
Yeah, you know, weed has always kind of been widely accepted there. And I mean, I remember Ann Arbor was always the place to go for like the best head shops and stuff. And yeah, I believe on campus there, Amanda had to remind me about this, but cannabis use was like a $15 or a $50 ticket. It was not really a big deal. If you got caught, you were mostly just slapped with a fine. So that's great. If you want to like sit down in the grass and smoke a joint, or let's be real, smoke out of a dirty glass bowl, nobody was going to yell at you.
Yeah. So very specifically, it was in 1972 that they changed the laws to make possession an infraction instead of a federal offense. And so they literally set the standard there that it would be if you got caught with weed, simple possession, which previously, again, you would have gone to jail for, it was a $5 fine. If you did it twice, it was like a $10 fine.
Yeah.
And I mean, even in the 70s, that was not a lot of money.
Yeah, well, and 72, wow, that goes back so much further than I thought. Well, that's great. I wish I would have known that more. I would have applied to more colleges in the area instead of just being like, oh, Hash Bash is cool, I'll go visit.
Yes, and Hash Bash has, like, we talked about it last week. I didn't know this rich history when we were talking about it last week in our 420 episode. It was just like, I was thinking of it as just like, I don't know, another cannabis event that's been around for a little while, you know, like the Cannabis Cup or whatever. No, the Hash Bash has a crazy history in the cannabis and the counterculture movement. And I just discovered this whole rabbit hole, a Michigan hole that I've just been diving down.
I mean, I can vouch for it. Ann Arbor is way cool. And even some of the like folks that I grew up with have like migrated down there, and that's where they live now. So if you are traveling in the Midwest, I think you'd be really surprised to go there and see how good the weed and the food and the people are. It's kind of hard to beat.
Yeah. And I think that some of these events also started back in the 70s as well. So Hash Bash has been around for a really long time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I'd really love to check it out now, because I promise you it's more than just like the black light posters when I was there in 1999 or whatever, where everyone was still like, isn't this cool that we're getting away with this? And then now there's like actual brands out there representing their companies, and other people who are like just having that like homespun, homegrown spirit where you can walk around with a half a pound in a jar and just hand out nugs to folks. Like I'd really love to see what it has grown into, because I'm sure the folks in the 70s who got this started like had no clue where we'd be now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish we were like, I mean, you said 99. I wish that we were old enough to actually have gone back in the day, dude, because seriously, when you look at the list of people that have come through to celebrate cannabis in Ann Arbor, like John Lennon, Tommy Chong, Yoko Ono, there's just a massive, massive list. Let's see, Stevie Wonder, Bob Seger's on the list. Okay, Black Panthers were there as security for some of the OG back in 71, I think was the first year. Allen Ginsberg, like these are some big freaking names in weed. I mean, I know I just met Afro Man, but like this is like
I was gonna say it was just what Willie Nelson's 90th birthday party, and he had like 2 nights, this huge concert, tons of people on the bill, big celebration. Can we bring that energy back to our weed celebrations?
Let's do
You
it.
know, I love having Redman play at the after concert. That's cool. But can we also bring on all of these folks? Like it's almost kind of too bad now that what we get for like weed celebrity is like Urkel or Jaleel White promoting his, Purple Urkel brand or whatever. And I still think that's cool. I'm not gonna lie. I think that is cool.
Down for that too. I mean, yeah, it's not Abby Hoffman, but I have a thing it's Urkel.
yeah, right. That's cool. He's gonna be on the bus handing out joints. Okay.
Yeah. So let me think here. So you're from Michigan. I always find that so hard to swallow because you're so fucking Portland.
My skin is like a pasty white now from all of the rain showers. Yes. No, I love it here. This is definitely like my place. And I think I've been here 15 or 16 years now. So I'm settled. But the Midwest was pretty cool place to grow up. Like Michigan is never there's bumper stickers and everything. You're never more than 15 miles from a lake or something like that.
I love that.
Pretty great for the like 3 months out of the year that the weather is hot enough to go and like kick around a lake or go fishing or get out on a sailboat or something, which are all pretty rad activities.
I will say honestly, I don't want to get into the weather topic here today, but it was significantly warmer there than it was here, like by like 20 degrees. And people were like, it was only a 4-hour drive. And I'm like, I am equally confused, but it was cold and rainy. And now I'm wearing shorts. Like I haven't put on shorts yet. I'm wearing a hoodie. You just told me it's 90 degrees in Oregon. It's fucking freezing here.
Oh, man. Well, you know what? I'll trade you. I have no AC. And, I melt when it gets this hot.
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, so you're from Michigan. Like what are so I was only in Ann Arbor and Ipsy. I don't know. What are some other like things to do if one went out there? Like what's good in Michigan?
You know what? I grew up near or in Traverse City. The little, Michigan looks like a mitten. It's the Mitten state. So imagine the pinky area. That's me on the West Coast. Really, if you're up there in the summer, it's great. Like there's tons of agriculture. All of the cherries and apples and pears have like totally been turned into vineyards at this point. So there's tons of like pretty good wine to drink. And Michigan has always been super friendly with cannabis. Is probably why I have this like blasé attitude about lighting up anywhere. I was walking along the river yesterday smoking a joint, and somebody was like, oh my, like seriously? And their friend was like, well, it is legal now. And I just thought, like, where have these people been? Like, can we just light up everywhere? I'm surprised I'm still getting looks. Anyway, so it's always kind of had that vibe. I got pulled over and they found my big jar of weed, and they basically said, we can take this weed from you and just send you on home, or you could get in trouble tonight. And I was like, enjoy that weed, man. So it's always been pretty lax. The problem is the climate sucks. And I think that there was maybe one hydro store in Traverse when I grew up. And I think it was one of those places where guys knew to like park 2 blocks away and like switch cars on the way over. Because the pervasive reminder that you could get in trouble for just having weed was everywhere. Even if they were pretty lax about it, like the fear mongering was real.
Well, that's the thing. Even when I returned to the States, it's like everything is quite lax these days in general. But if they want a reason to fuck with you, weed is an easy way to get that ball rolling. So that fear is genuine. No matter, I mean, our Croatia episode, decriminalized, doesn't make a difference sometimes. Legal, yeah. If they want to fuck with you,
perfect example.
Absolutely will. And I think in Michigan, what I saw, the law right now is that you cannot smoke publicly. You can only smoke on private property. So basically in your home or at your friend's house, like it has to be private property, but they have very generous carrying laws because I think you can have up to 2.5 ounces on your person.
Okay, very nice.
So that's quite generous, I think. I mean, it should be as much as you want, but in comparatively,
when I'm grabbing the amount of weed I need for the day, it's generally under 2 ounces. Let's be real.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think you can have up to 10 in your home, which also sounds weird. I'm like, again, that's kind of a weird thing to throw in there, but sure, we'll take it,
Yeah. Okay, right. It's better than some states, like worse than others. And I would really hope nobody's going into your house and like weighing out your jars.
Yeah. But I think these stories of pre-legalization are like really fun to document. It's one of the reasons I really liked popping into Western New York with the Buffalo episode, because in a few years, it'll be so different. So I think it's really fun to hear like what it was like for you 15 years ago, and then what it was like for me last weekend. Like 2 totally different places. The vibe sounds like it was the same, but might as well be 2 completely different places when it comes to cannabis, because it's everywhere now. It's absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, and it sounds like the boom of dispensaries here from, I don't know, 5 years ago, when the market was really hot, everyone's really excited, sales were only climbing. I love that excitement in that era where everything is just going up, and you're like, okay, as long as we don't fuck anything up, like we're going to be able to sell this round and move on to the next one. And that's why I'm also really excited to hear about stories like Winewood, because it sounded like a friends and family type situation, only a few people on the ship. And I think when you have 200 lights, that becomes a lot more difficult to manage, and something has to give somewhere, right? And usually that's the flower quality.
Yeah, I think that not only do they have a stunning setup, but I also really respect the fact that they're growing under 200 plants, because I think a big part of what's bringing down the industry across the board was overproduction. And it happened in Washington when they first legalized, and there was the 3-year boom. Then everyone lost their jobs. And right now we're seeing massive layoffs in the cannabis industry here in Ontario. I couldn't likely across the country, but definitely here in Ontario. The wages are not competitive to other industries at all anymore. And so I know a lot of people that have been laid off in the past couple months. And I think a big part of it was this overproduction that happened. Plus, there's something really to be said about going to a dispensary that is really putting in this next level of care in the products they're producing, even down to it being hand trimmed. The jar was perfection. They also recycle their jars there. They have a little bin and you can bring your jars back to recycle. Like, it's just all these little moments for me that really made them shine. They're not paying me to say this, man. I freaking was so wowed.
When you connect with like a connoisseur shop, like you said, the jars, right? And the jars are returned or whatever. When we first opened Fidus, we eschewed the pop tops altogether. Everything was going to go out in a glass jar. And even if you just came in to get a little bit of weed, it was going to be presented in this way that was really nice and going to like protect the integrity of the plant. And so many places have had to pre-pack or switch to Mylar or whatever. I ended up stopping at a dispensary I don't normally stop at. I dropped the wife off. Hey, I need some weed. Let me go in here. Let me get 2 grams of this. And then paid the guy, and he handed it to me in 2 different pop tops. And it's Oregon is like deli style, so they can reach in with chopsticks and pull out some buds and weigh it out for you. This was already weighed down to the individual gram in a pop top, which means that it only held, or it only took up maybe like generously a third of the small pop top. So for me to just smoke 2 joints, now I have like 2 plastic containers worth of waste that I immediately felt guilty about. And a glass jar is great because you can use it and bring it back, wash it out, use a little alcohol to like wipe the inside out or whatever. So I love when these outlets are being run by connoisseurs who are thinking about those details and not just like, okay, how can we get all this product out the door with this much ROI on it?
Yeah, the whole experience, start to finish, literally obsessed. Literally obsessed. Like, I think a new standard has been set for me, and it made me really sad for Ontario because like they had these setups with these little tubes, and they laid out all of their strains. Like, let's say maybe they had 10 or 15 in these little tubes in this like glass display case, so you could see the weed. They color coded them from sativa to indica. So it was like a rainbow of flavor, a rainbow of effects. And of course you could see it. And then I was like, oh, is there any way I could smell these? And they were like, yeah, obviously. And I was like, no, you can't do that where I live. And it takes away from the whole experience. Just walking in and smelling the weed and seeing it on display, and just like seeing the plants on the TV screen with the little fans going. And I don't know, man, it becomes a destination. It becomes an experience. It changes the whole way you see the weed. And you and I have spent time on weed farms, so I might not be as wowed as the average person seeing a weed plant, whether it's indoor or outdoor, or if there's 10 or 1,000, or, I mean, I've worked on farms with up to 16,000 plants. So I've seen a lot of fucking weed, but man, when you're buying it, it's like why people go to pick their own berries. It's twice as expensive. But you see a fucking berry on a little berry bush, and it turns the whole thing around. Yeah. Their weed was not overpriced. It was standard to all the other shops that I went to. And yeah, I just would say that that is the experience.
Yeah. Well, it's a great model too. And if you are a farm and you're vending your own pounds of weed to your own shop, you have a much better control over the price you're offering and the profit you're making on that, just because it's going directly to a consumer, right? You're able to pay yourself on both ends there, which is great. And it should be that way, because then you can really dictate your own price, and the consumer can come back and they can decide if that's worth their value or not. But right. The cool thing is, you're not some intake guy somewhere isn't looking at your weed and being like, well, we do need one more for the budget shelf. Let's get this on there. You can say, oh, okay, I know how much this costs to produce, and have it trimmed really nicely and where this is going to line up. And actually, I know that the nose on this isn't crazy, but it looks insane. It gets you really crazy high. The yield was super low. So let's just limited batch this, put it out for this. Having that connection with the consumer means that you can also ask them to take the risks with you. You can say, hey, look, I wanted to try some peanut butter gorilla paws or whatever, and I figured I had enough people willing to take that risk with me, so we like threw some in and ran like a couple of rows of it. So it's a very limited batch, but Sam, I know you're in here and you're always buying my funky stuff, try this one. That's cool. That's such a closer connection with the consumer than what most people can get.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's it was so nice just to not be in a yeah, man, it really made me sad for Ontario because our dispensaries are just the same stuff in different shops. It is a complete disconnect. It's the difference between going to a farmer's market and a Safeway. You know what I mean? It's really, that's the difference there. So yeah, that was huge. Speaking of farmers markets, I did pop into a really cute market in Ipsy, which I will also give a shout out to.
Plug it.
I think it was called the Farm Stand, Farm Coffee Shop, something like that. I had to edit our last episode, Yes, I'm on vacation, but I'm always working. And I popped in, delicious coffee, great baked goods, perfect sunroom, a literal sunroom that you could sit in and get work done. And it was so nice. So that is like, I just rolled up a little spliff. I just walked around the corner because I feel like hippies don't like smoke. They weren't hippies, but I didn't want to be smoking all up in their zone.
Yeah, let's take a little walk.
It was the tobacco more than the weed I was worried about. Took a little walk, came back, and I just sat down on a perfect little sunroom and I just mashed out a few hours of editing. And so if I lived in like Windsor, London, just closer to the border, I would take weekend trips and go drink coffee. I would go on a Monday. I would spend a Monday in that town. I would spend a week there, but a Monday would be great.
Yeah, I like that. Cross the border, grab your weed, sit, smoke a little coffee, smoke a little coffee, drink a little coffee.
I agreed with you.
Yeah, I'm right here. I'm over here. This is my day, by the way. I'm smoking a little coffee over here. Drink a little coffee. And yeah, that sounds great.
Honestly, it was great. I went for 4 days and I went to both those spots twice because it was just so cute. I will say downtown parking was a lot. Hey, Smoking Spot fans. We're here to tell you about the newest launch from Centelligence Projects.
Over the last year, we've created the Cannabis Aroma Wheel. It's a sensory tool designed to help connoisseurs take their knowledge to the next level. So whether you're a bud tender, dispensary owner, cultivator, or you just love the smell of weed, you can better appreciate the cannabis in front of you.
Get your copy of the most detailed sensory tool built specifically for the cannabis industry and order your Cannabis Aroma Wheel today at centelligenceproject.com. The other thing that happens in Ipsy, Ann Arbor, which I tried to go to report on to this podcast, is they have a blazed bingo.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
I fucking love bingo. I really do.
Yes, do it.
Maybe it's my Virgo, but I like I like doing puzzles. And anyway, so I was really stoked because it's like, you get high, you go to bingo, there's prizes. I was like, yo, this event is for me. So I went, I paid for parking, which, hot tip, the parking machine will always take your change, but it's free after 6 p.m. So cut to me at 6:30, putting in $2, rip. And then I it was at a bar, which I was very surprised by because that's a big no-no, is weed and alcohol. So I was very surprised. I went in, no one was there. And I was like, where's the baked bingo? Like, there's this online event for it. Like, it's like a dispensary told me about it. I was like, okay. And they were like, literally the last one was last week. You just missed it.
Damn.
And this is the second, when I was in Vancouver a couple weeks ago, every Friday night, book club hosts an industry event. I was like, I'm so excited to see you guys on Friday. And they were like, oh, this is the only week we're not doing it. So I just keep just missing. Right. It's moving to a new location. So it is still going to be happening. I didn't get to experience it myself. They said a lot of people come. It's a really, really good time. And it's just one of many regular cannabis events. Aside from obviously Hash Bash, which happens every year, which I would love to check out. We just missed it though. I think it's
it's spring. I think usually March was what I was thinking. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think it's in the spring, early spring, end of winter. So we just missed it. Maybe next year. But I'd love to check that out. But just if you went casually, if you looked up some events, you would find some. There's a lot of cool stuff happening there, and just like a lot of beautiful places to chill. So that's Michigan in a nutshell.
Yeah, I want to talk more cannatourism just in general, like on the show. I think that's something we can really dig into. Amanda is really good at exploring these places and finding like the dope spots before they're like super well known. So let's take advantage of that. If you like smoking spot, let's take it from your backyard. And if you know cool cities, cool spots that you can go and take the trip to, travel to, and make it about the spot and the weed, get it smoking spot, then let's talk about that. Like, I really want to explore more of the places we have here. Legalization has been such a novelty for so long that now that we're finally settling into it, I think that we can get tastes of terroir, little hints of culture when we're talking to these people here. And something that I hadn't even thought about before today is digging into the history of an area and seeing like how they've established this, why it is a cool spot, and like what's flowing through there. What kind of vibe does it have, you know?
Absolutely. Because it always surprises you. I mean, the Ann Arbor story, I can't believe I didn't know that. To be honest, I'm not a canna history buff, but I'm shocked that that's never come across in my years of baby anarchist studying the SDS and studying, that whole movement, the Yippie movement. So for me, just discovering the history of Hash Bash, like I love that stuff. Slovenia has a rich history of cannabis. I never would have guessed it. Like sometimes you really don't know until you pick a place. And I would have never just said, oh, I'm going to Google the history of Ann Arbor and freaking Ypsilanti. Maybe one might look into Michigan as a whole. So I think it's really neat to have these little cities, these little towns, these little pockets. Western New York was fun. So, and we have some really good spots coming up. Yes. Because literally, ladies and gentlemen, folks and kids of all ages, next week is a once in a lifetime moment because me and Ryan are meeting up in real fucking life, dog. We have been just hanging out through a screen since day one.
I had to check myself to be like, is it for the first time in person? It will be for the first time in person. So, hey, very cool. Excited to see how tall Amanda actually is. I have no clue.
I'm very short.
6'5" is my guess. And yeah, smoke some good weed. I only have like a week to try and curate some samples for a little taste test. So expect some in-person recording, some fun social media stuff. In fact, like make sure you're dialed in and following us both all over there. I'm at the Loud 100 on Instagram, Amanda.
Emerald.temple.living.
Yeah, and at the smoking spot for everything we have going on over there.
Yeah, I don't know if you cut out there. It was at the smoking spot.
Yeah, find us there.
Track us on my end, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Track us down over there. Tons of good weed stuff. Our sensory tool that we made for smelling weed, for investigating cannabis, for getting a better appreciation of the plant, is now available for print or in print at Centelligenceproject.com.
Got it. You still got it.
Everything's got a fun name. I got to remember all these names.
So yeah, I'm excited. And also, I guess if you guys have not checked out the last episode, it should be out by the time you're hearing this.
It will be.
I really put a lot of love and time into crafting the interviews for that episode, creating my soundscape. So even though I think it's one of our longest episodes, just going over an hour, listen till the end because I got to interview a handful of folks from the team rolling the world's biggest joint. And the stories are actually really heartwarming. And I'm really proud of that episode. So make sure you check that one out as well.
Yeah, Amanda did a killer job putting that one together. If you dig it, like send it to a friend who's also going to dig it. I mean, it's the world's biggest joint. It happened. We were there for it. You want to hear about it. I promise you. Cool. Give us 5 stars and all the love, and we will be back next week with more The Smoking Spot.
Said no matter what kind of pain and anguish life may bring you, oh, smoke it up, hold it down, and don't ever stop. Well, you can always find your smoking spot. Yeah, you can always find your smoking spot.